People ask me, my kid is dropping out, and I'm worried about his head, his cartilage, and his rectal.
Right.
Much more than I wrote it also in the article, much more than he's wearing tefillin, because
I saw you wrote that in the article.
Yeah, no one knows, but
let me just say, in case of Rabbi Menachem, for those who didn't read the article, Rabbi Bombach pointed out an incredibly important nekuda, an incredibly important point, and that was that in America we call it, Rabbi Menachem, form or substance. Substance is tochen, what's real, and form is how you package things. So Rabbi Menachem wrote in the piece that how disturbing it was for him to, again, Rabbi Menachem, if I'm not saying, please correct me. Rabbi Menachem was saying how he didn't write the word disturbing there, but it was clear from his the inflection and the words that he was using, was that that he asked people if they're more. Somebody expressed that they're more concerned about the trappings, the chitzonius, the outer package of what Rabbi Bombach and I look like when we walk in the street. Wearing our clothing and with a beard and peyot, all of that, rather than the core observance, which is, let's say, putting on tefillin, phylacteries, which Jewish adult men are supposed to wear every day. So, in other words, Rabbi Nachman was saying that parents should focus, care less about what your neighbors are going to say, and care more about the reality of if the children are embracing religion or not. And I'll tell you, Rabbi Menachem, it's great. You and I, we finish each other's sentences. It's a pleasure. We're from the first time we met. I'll tell you something that I tell parents when they tell me about. We could share ideas. You just gave me one, so I'll give you one. I tell parents, when they say their child is dressing in this way, I said, if you lived on a farm and you had no neighbors, what would you do? Would you do the same thing? Which is the same way, basically the same concept. They say it's just another way of getting them to think about it. And the truth is that we don't live in farms, right? Which is the challenge. So what was people's response to that part? When you say about the tefillin, but nobody sees the tefillin, right? But people see the other stuff, and that's normal. Folks, there's an old Yiddish expression that we pick up a lulav and esrog, the four species that we hold on, fruits that we have a palm, a lulav, and an esrog. We make a blessing on that and we shake it in shul, in public. And before we go to sleep, we say Shema in our own bedroom to ourselves. So what the Yiddish expression goes, that if we shook the lulav in our bedroom and we said Kriyat Shema, the Shema at night in the shul, imagine how differently it would look, right? It is a good line, right? So it's not my line, but the reality is that we do, and it is. I'd like to share a thought. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, and I think that would be a response to the fellow who wrote asking the question about did the previous generations do it differently. So there's a wonderful Syrian rabbi named Rabbi David Ozeri. He's a very distinguished rabbi in the Syrian community in Brooklyn and Deal, and we were presenting together at an Aguda convention in America in 1998, I think it was, on Shabbat and Friday night. So we weren't being recorded, so we could say whatever we wanted, So he said, look, we in the Syrian community, of course we have problems like everybody else. As he said, that we're not going to tell you we don't have problems. Of course we do. He says, one thing we don't have is we don't do labels. We don't have this type of this brand and this. He said, we have a Beit Knesset, there's a synagogue, and everybody's welcome. The people who are Sabbath, Shabbat observant, people who aren't, the rabbis, the lay people, learned people and unlearned people.
So the Sephardi community, since ever, they're much more tolerance. The problem is with Ashkenazi.
So what do you attribute it to, Rabbi Nachum? Folks, we never discussed this, just so you know. What do you attribute it to?
No, I mean, the Ashkenazi community is much more, but the Sephardi is much more open-minded, much more tolerant.
Can I offer you my thought why that's the case?
Yeah.
And while he was talking, I did not think of it beforehand. While Rabbi Elzeri was speaking, he turned to me and he said, Ashkenazim, you have to learn to do what we do. He says, we'll learn from you. We learn things from each other. But so I told him, like, it just hit me I said, you didn't have the Haskalah. And I really believe that a lot of these reactions that we have about the Kaddish sitting, and that would be my response to that fellow, it was from the trauma, for the Haskalah folks, comes from the shorish of the word, is, Rabbi Nachum will do that, it's Hebrew, he's better at that than me, right? It comes from the shorish of seichel, Haskalah. Seichel means wisdom. So in Europe, there was in the late 1700s, the 1800s, there was a period called the Haskalah, the Enlightenment period, and people, it was like, it was a whole new world opening up, and there were lots of advances in science and everything else, and the reform movement, the conservative movement, all started there. Until 1700, there was no such thing as reform, conservative, Orthodox, Haredi, this, that. You were Jewish, you know, and you know, whether you went to synagogue or not, that was your synagogue. They say, right, in Israel, right, especially in Israel, there's a lot of Sephardi community. They the Orthodox shul that I don't go to, that's my shul, you know, right? So the people, that's the way it was, folks. Read up on it. I really encourage parents to read up on this. The history, everything there's a historical context here. So what happened was, all of a sudden, the Enlightenment period came, and the Ashkenazim, not the Sephardim that came from you know, the lands closer to the Middle East and the like, and the Ashkenazim, the people from Poland and Russia and Lithuania, got clobbered. The whole look at the percentages. Now Orthodoxy has has become much more larger and more powerful over the last 30, 40 years. When I was a kid, I grew up in Bell Harbor, so the Orthodox shul had 75 families. The conservative and Reform temples had 1,500 families each. So I think they were so rattled that they sort of had this reaction of, we have to hold on. So yeah. I think there's also historical context, which I feel we don't have to feel this way today. That's my big point. Someone just asked about Hasidus. Hasidus was also a reaction to a lot of that.
Absolutely, yeah. We know that the Sephardi community